Hello, everyone here in the room with us and also virtually, those watching. Thanks so much for joining us with this incredible panel of CEO women. We're talking about Michigan's future, how to make it better, how to make us a top 10 state, what are we good at? And I thought we would kick things off with talking about that. Michigan is a unique state. We have some unique talent here, and we have some unique resources. So I know, Rachel, we talked about this along with you, Sandy, backstage, about Michigan as a state and what's unique to us and where those opportunities are.
Well, I think, yes. I have the words, and Sandy has the actual data, so combined, we're a good team. But no, I think so, for us, economic development is really important to make us a top 10 state, and to me, the most important thing is the fastest growing state. And I think the real thing is a strategy. And you look around the country, and what used to be happening between countries is now happening between states, in so much as everyone's competing. But like everything, I think if we're going to compete to win. And it seems almost every state has a nearly indistinguishable economic development strategy. Like, we're going to go deep on semiconductors because that's the future. We're going to go deep on AI because that's the future. And all of these things are true, but not all these things are necessarily Michigan's core strength. So to me, as we move forward, it really seems to be what is going to happen here that's unique and nowhere else. So again, this I'm about to say something about which I know zero, other than I can read an export table. But Michigan's biggest export remains agriculture. This is a unique thing. There's a ton of innovation happening there with climate change and water, and something conveniently we have. This seems like a core strength to me. Partly now, thanks to Elon Musk, love him or hate him, everyone's talking about co-locating R&D and manufacturing. Now, this is something that most states haven't done. Actually, that is Michigan's DNA. So to the extent there's a strategy there, that makes a ton of sense. So I really, to me, I think if we try to do everything, we're gonna do nothing. And I can give one example, and people who know me are probably sick of me doing this, but in a past life before I was a furniture retailer, I was in the solar R&D space. And one example I've seen when it really works when you focus and really laser focus with collaboration amongst all the sectors was this great example called Semitech. I got to know Semitech because we're sitting there at the Department of Energy getting all these great grant applications from SUNY Albany. Awesome, what a nice change from Stanford and Berkeley. What's going on there? Well, what was going on is in the 80s, when we, the US, was really concerned that the Japanese at the time were gonna clean our clocks on semiconductor manufacturing, there was a great consortium amongst the key manufacturers, Intel being obviously amongst them, the state, the university, and I think the key thing here is sustained. So it was this 10-year long-term investment with huge collaboration amongst all those players, and lo and behold, semiconductor manufacturing flourished in upstate New York. I got to know it because they'd pivoted at the time from semiconductors to solar. So there's examples of this working well, but they're really, really, really focused on your core strength. And that's what I don't see in our strategy.
Sandy?
Let me just give a few statistics.
Please.
All right. So, Rachel is right, and so are you, Rhonda. When you think about Michigan, we have so much to offer. Everyone knows that we have still the most renowned engineering talent in this country. Everyone knows that we have natural resources. I said earlier, we have 11,000 inland lakes. We have 19 million acres of trees. We control 30% of the Great Lakes surface water. Water is important in this country. We have world-class universities. You heard so many of them on the stage this morning. And why do we want to be a top 10 state? We want to be a top 10 state. It's more income per household. It's more people working, and it's more people moving to Michigan annually. Top 10 states get the size of St. Clair Shores in terms of population moving to their state. 58,000 people if you're in the top 10. Ladies and gentlemen, we are number 31 out of 50. That's a fact. We don't have the 23 results yet, but we haven't leapfrogged other states. And other states are making investments just like we are. I give a lot of credit to our governor and the legislature. Billions of dollars are being invested. We don't have the impact of those investments yet, but we're not leapfrogging other states because they are spending money too. And so we have a lot of work to do to move up to top 10. And there's economic reasons for wanting to move up. And I know that my other panelists will talk about some of these issues, but to me, we do not have an economic toolbox that will take us to a top 10 state.
And what do you mean by an economic toolbox? What do we need to have in it?
Okay. The governor's not here, right? Okay, so okay, can I just give a few statistics? We do not have a research and development tax credit. We are one of only 13 states in this country without a tool for research and development, one of 13. We do not have a payroll tax credit. We're one of 8 without a payroll tax credit. We don't have enough site-ready investments. I mean, one of the reasons Ohio got Intel and so many suppliers surrounding them is because they had a site-ready with water in the middle of Columbus. And we do not really have the innovation and entrepreneurial support that we need. That's the tools, and we're working hard. The MEDC is working hard. We have to do more.
Christina, why don't you jump in and talk about what is working when we're talking about this talent gap and luring people to our state?
Yeah, so I think talent is definitely a key issue that we need to continue to address. We are not a net growing country or net growing state. If you look at the folks that talked about the education panel that was up here, 50% of the people that we're educating are leaving our state. Many of them are staying, but it's not nearly enough. We also, in manufacturing, we rank dead last in terms of what high schoolers want to go into. So there's a talent gap in the state and also in the manufacturing and more specifically. And so some of the things that I think could be successful and that we have seen as being successful are related to, we've got looking at different pools. So when we look at the pools of talent, people are typically looking at different areas. We should look at maybe boomerangs. So rather than trying to keep them, we can keep as many as we can, but some people are gonna go, let's get them when they come back. And so when they come back and start a family, we've got some really great assets, quality of life, is some of the natural resources that were talked about, other types of things. But we need to make sure that we've got world-class childcare, that we've got good educational resources, educational outcomes from K through 12, so that parents feel comfortable locating here. We also need affordable housing. So making sure that we've got the right assets to attract boomerangs. And then the other pool that we have looked at Cascade Engineering is really looking at returning citizens as a population and people who have been formerly incarcerated or people who are coming from poverty. The stat is 41% of Michiganders are at ALICE or below, which is the asset limited, income constrained yet employed. And so looking at that pool, how can we move people from that pool into jobs? I think manufacturing has a unique opportunity to have a lot of starter level jobs that people can get their feet under them. We actually have one of the lower recidivism rates in the nation due to the fact that we've done a lot of returning citizens work as a state. And so I think that's really exciting because the #1 indicator of not going back into prison is that you have a job, that you're employed. And so once you have the employment, then you can start putting the other things in place. You can support those growth mechanisms and ultimately grow our own, either from the schools, from other pools, because people aren't net coming to Michigan. And so how can we attract that differently?
Well, I think, Natalie, you are luring people to Michigan. You are creating jobs. You are taking advantage of investments that are being made from the federal government into our state as it relates to infrastructure, EVs, battery plants. So let's focus on some good, some positivity.
I mean, it most certainly is a balance. And like Sandy said, we do need to concentrate on really undergirding the businesses that are here. We need to be on the cusp of innovation, so R&D, investment is extremely important. But we are in the state of Michigan, and the state of Michigan makes things.
Yes.
And it was one of the key motivating factors when I decided to start the EV charger manufacturing. There were a number of states that we were considering, and there were a number of states that were considering us. But I wanted to keep it in Michigan. And more importantly, I wanted to keep it in the city of Detroit because, I mean, where else would you make EV charging manufacturing other than the city of Detroit? We are the automotive capital of the world, and so we do have resources that exist here. We do know how to make things. We know how to build things, and we know how to build things well. And so my thought process was to capitalize on the engineers that are here, the engineering talent, to capitalize on the skilled labor that knows how to build automotive engines and parts and pieces, and to capitalize on the vendors that are here in the state of Michigan that I knew had the ability to migrate or to matriculate into this EV industry very easily. And so I never found that there was difficulty with respect to workforce. I just found that there was difficulty in engagement in education so that we could have our community to understand that, particularly in the industry that we're in the EV sector, that these opportunities are there for them. We just had to have to continue to create bridges with those communities so that they can understand that the skill sets and the talents that they have are transferable to this industry. You're talking about a multi-trillion-dollar industry right now. It is the fourth industrial revolution with respect to electrification and mobility and infrastructure as a whole. We are in an unprecedented time. We are likely not to see this type of investment for some time to come. And so when you're talking about equity and inclusion, when you're talking about giving opportunities for everyone, it does have to be a collaborative effort so that the communities that we are trying to engage, those that are unemployed, underemployed, low income, have the ability to understand that there are opportunities for them, and we need to bridge the gap in that.
How are we doing as a state bridging that gap?
I think that we're doing well.
That education gap, to see that there's opportunity in our state like this that's so unique, and there's so much funding in it for even people to start businesses like you have.
It's interesting, representation matters. So I always say this, you can't be what you can't see. So it has to start with each of us individually and collectively as stakeholders in this industry, from the corporate level, from the government level, from the utility level, and from the educational level. We all have to take a part in that. There's not one person or one entity that can own it, and there's not one entity or person that does own it. And so we all have to collaboratively see the value and the worth in that. We created a program called Communities in Charge at Dunamis, and that program is very specific to EV deployment, EV charger deployment, of course, but going in communities where they are. So creating the community engagement and the education about why would I want to drive an EV? How can I drive an EV? I thought that they were too expensive. How do I have the ability to put an EV charger in my house? I thought I was going to run out of a charge if I go 100 miles. That's, I'm just going to stick with my ICE engine. And so we decided to create a program where we would use faith-based organizations and nonprofit organizations, because you have a structure there that's already created. You have an audience that's right there that you can just talk from the pulpit, and you can say, hey, this is why this is for you. This is going to benefit your community in these ways. This can benefit you economically. It can benefit you job-wise or career-wise. It can benefit your communities environmentally. The impact of that. Many communities of color, most communities of color that have environmental issues also have, economic challenges as well. So these are the communities that need this the most, the environmental justice communities and low-income communities. So it's absolutely imperative that we get that messaging across and engage first, respectfully, in order to tell what the advantages are, meet the communities where they are, and then provide the opportunities from there.
I love that you're doing that work, Natalie, and I think it's, as Suzanne Shank said, that's really an example of the radical collaboration. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but I do want to give,
Let's keep it real.
I do want to give a statistic and then an idea that emanated from Business Leaders for Michigan. And so our K through 12 education system in the state of Michigan is number 42 in the nation, 42nd in the nation. That should be alarming to all of us. And when I talk to my friends, they say, yeah, but my school district is great. It's just the rest of them. So what I do with those friends is I send them to launchmichigan.org, which shows you how your school district is doing compared to your peers in the country for your size. So if you think your school district is doing great and you're not part of the 42nd out of 50, go to launchmichigan.org. Our system is failing, and we have to make radical change because no one's in charge. There's no accountability. There's no authority to improve. Kudos to the governor and the legislature. They actually gave $240 million to the Michigan Department of Education to gain efficiencies in the school system and drive more dollars in the classroom. You know how much has been spent so far? Zero. Michigan is only one of 6 states in this country that does not place the governor in charge of the leadership of its education system. That takes a ballot vote. That's a big change. It's a lot of work. We have to get there. We have to change how we educate our children, and we have to put more dollars in the classroom to get them ready for the future.
So let's look forward. Christina, talk about where you see us as a state, maybe the next 5 years, 10 years, if we begin to implement some of the things that we're talking about that will help take us to that top 10 level.
Yeah, I think that the big pieces, I would echo the education piece. We're going to be dealing with the outcomes of the COVID pandemic for the next 15 years of graduates, and so we're already behind on some of those outcomes, and it's going to be a challenge. So I'm not. I don't think it's going to be an overnight thing. I think a lot of reinvestment in the K through 12 education that will also help with the boomerang folks that are coming back because they feel comfortable that they can bring their kids into our schools. So I think the school system needs to be addressed, as well as more STEM education. I think that having more of the STEM skill sets of science and math, and then exposure to manufacturing and other types of roles. The Gallup poll says that manufacturing ranks dead last in terms of what they want to go into when they come out of high school, but if they have exposure, it goes to like 3 out of 10. So we've been working with GVSU on a talent link. So we have the co-op program is our typical program, how we get young students, engineers and other folks in, and that's been working for a number of years, but they have this new talent link where they're getting liberal arts students as well, exposure to careers while they're in school so that they're more likely to get that exposure, to get engaged, to jump into the role. So I think it's really, we've got to address education, we've got to address talent, and then the other support services, childcare, and other types of support services. I think about them as almost infrastructure. Absolutely. You know, we've got to have the infrastructure here so that businesses can locate and they can say, I'm going to get good talent, I'm going to have the right support for those talent resources, and I want to continue to grow.
And you've had some great success stories, Natalie, just in the manufacturing space and getting into it, having never worked in that arena before, and also the excitement that you're seeing of the people you're hiring.
Absolutely. I'm a lawyer by trade, by the way. I have no technical background whatsoever, but definitely a passion and a vision for this industry and using clean energy technology to empower our communities, using power to empower. And in that, I think we talked about, again, representation. It matters, and the exposure matters. And so to be able to support businesses through the educational system, to be able to attract the talent is absolutely essential. We do an intern program every summer, and we work with local nonprofit organizations. There's a nonprofit organization called the Union that we work with, and they place students with us that are 11th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. And I have this great story. This one kid had never seen an EV before, more or less knowing about an EV charger. He came to work with us. At the end of the internship, he did a presentation. He brought his entire family with him. Our entire executive team sat around a boardroom, and he created a PowerPoint presentation. And he did such a wonderful job in articulating what he had learned that summer. And he really is representative of exactly what you just talked about, Christina, because the exposure made him think, this is exactly what I want to do now. Whereas before he knew nothing about it. And he, but the coolest part about that, because he said, oh, I want to come back and I want to work for Dunamis. I want to get an EV when I get my first car. But the coolest part about it was that his mother, his father, his grandmother, and his sister came. And all four of them said, we're going to get an EV. We didn't even know that this existed. We know nothing about this industry. This is so wonderful. It's so wonderful that you're here and your team is here. And this is a great representation for us in this community. We're located on the east side of Detroit, in the deep east. I know I have some east siders out there. So we're in the deep east, in the hood. And so, it was phenomenal. And I believe that, we are hiring from the homeless communities. We are hiring from, young people with GEDs on the line, now making these EV chargers in this emerging technology. It's a phenomenal opportunity, but as Christina said, we also need assistance in eliminating the barriers. Childcare is extremely important. And when you are targeting this type of talent force or workforce, you also have to create opportunities for them to succeed. Mental health opportunities, healthcare, those are the things that and exposure, we really need assistance there. And I think that the state and educational partnerships can really assist there.
So as we're trying to bridge and work together and make these radical changes, when we look at this audience here and watching virtually, what's the charge? What's the message?
Well, let's go back to education. I think we all believe in it. I don't think there's a person in this room, but I think it's incumbent upon us. I think we've seen, as Sandy was alluding, there potentially isn't the political will to do the really hard things. And I think if we're going to be willing to make changes and get through ballot initiatives, these are hard and very expensive things to do. So I think it's incumbent upon us. I don't see how education gets to the forefront unless population of the state of Michigan gets it to the forefront. And I think that's going to take every single person in this room to make happen, because these are really not simple changes. There's a few potentially obvious changes, but it's not like it's, the state of Massachusetts doing some interesting things, other states doing some interesting things. But it's not like, it's an easy hit the button and go. This is 10, 20 years of real change and real investment in a system that was designed for a state economy that doesn't exist today. It's just, you go launch, Michigan has better history than I do, but you go back to it really supported a state agricultural system that looks very different than today. So I think, we all have to work with leaders at the local level, leaders at the state level, education, I don't need to tell anyone, it's so decentralized, and everyone in between to make this a priority for voters.
I think it's recognizing the great assets that we have in this state and the reasons we all call this our home and raised our families here. That all still exists. And I believe that this community is more collaborative in terms of wanting to get things done than anywhere else I've traveled in this country. So I'm really happy about that. But we have to move forward and we have to face the facts. And that's hard to do. But reality is, we've got more work to do in order for us to not only grow talent, but to retain it and then attract from others. I mean, half of the people that we lose in the state of Michigan every year are under 35 years old. You can lose a 66-year-old and it doesn't hurt. But we can't lose the future of this state and this country.
I've certainly seen a transformation. I work in downtown Detroit at Channel 4 every single day. I've been there for 21 years downtown.
She gets up at 2 a.m.
And I wake up at 2 a.m. But I have watched the transformation in front of my eyes of more young people. Like just the downtown space, who's there out and about at 2 o'clock in the morning? It's a different place. So we have found a way to bring young talent here and keep them. I mean, I look at rocket companies, we've heard from them on the stage throughout the last couple of days. They are doing a phenomenal job. You have a different space. You're in Grand Rapids. What successes are you seeing there?
I think Grand Rapids has been pretty exciting to see. I often say that West Michigan is large enough to have examples of all the national problems, but small enough and cohesive enough to be a model of how to solve some of those problems. And I think there are some incredible, exciting things happening in the arts and culture space with the opera and the symphony and the ballet and all of the different resources. People really love the quality of life, but I think educational outcomes and especially K through 12 and childcare. We lost 1 in 4 daycare providers in Kent County during the pandemic, but we do have a millage, and there's some other things that we're working on trying to build those up. And so there's a lot of examples of people working collaboratively to try to address the concerns. Something that we've had that's been successful is the Source, which is an employee resource network, because there are often a lot of services that are available to support our employees, but they may not know how to access them. And so having a social worker on site that can help with different things that they might be having issues related to. We started a housing opportunity fund at the Source, which helps with down payment assistance for first homes and some other areas. And so I think there's a lot to be excited about, but I think making sure that we've got good education, childcare, transportation, and housing. That's the infrastructure that's needed to supercharge the engine of innovation and excellence that we have in West Michigan and in Michigan in general.
So I had an opportunity to tour Huntington downtown. Beautiful, multi-level building right across the street from Comerica Park, windows all around the building with views of the Ambassador Bridge and all the way to the east, the west, the north, the south. And it's empty. There's not a lot of people that are there every single day.
It's not empty.
It's not totally empty, but I saw a great office that I could use and a rooftop I could throw a party. But we are facing these beautiful structures, this beautiful corporations that have all of this space, and getting our talent back in the buildings, this hybrid and remote work, and even buying furniture to fill these buildings. There has been an impact with this desire to work remote, but then you still want the investment and the people to be in these spaces like downtown Detroit, like in Grand Rapids. How are we luring them back?
You have to insist that they come back. You just, period. You know, it's pretty easy. You're coming back to the office.
And see that?
I'll say, okay, so.
It's pretty easy.
Like everything in business, I think it comes down to culture. So I think ours was easy, you know. If you do not see the vision that the people that do the actual hard work of selling and delivering furniture can't work remote, then the Gardner White is really not the place for you. And I think, you know, we say we're sales support culture. If you want to be on our leadership team, you better really believe it. So I think, you know,
It's a nicer way of saying
it. Right?
But do you feel like you're risking losing great talent?
Don't care. They're not going to be a good fit if they don't understand their role in the organization.
So there's that, I guess, some of the younger people that have had this benefit of remote work and are rolling into it believing like this is the way to do it. I can be on the beach in Cancun and get my work done.
Well, I'll give you some data. I mean, like, so, you know, it sounds cute, but we've really spent a lot of time. We grew fast. We've spent a lot of the past year solidifying our core and really attracting, like, the top team, not I think, but I think the top team in the furniture industry. No questions asked. In doing so, we have recruited people from Washington State, Florida, Austin, New York, where am I missing some? So, and these are all young people with a ton of opportunities, including the opportunity to work remote, and they never considered it for a second. So I do think it comes down to a culture, and they feel, you know, one of them drives like so far every day, but he does it because he says, you know, I feel like I'm missing something when I'm not there. That's the culture, right? And I think it does work, and those are the right people, and if they're going to be a fit in your organization, they're going to come in.
Obviously, manufacturing, you've got
Totally
to be
different.
in the building.
We've been in person, we were essential, and we've been in person the whole time.
Yeah, but you know, for me, I have a little differing view on that. Of course, for manufacturing, you know, you have to be there. But for our executive team, especially in the industry that we're in, it's extremely competitive right now. And so because, you know, it's not like EV is rampant in Michigan, but, you know, the core talent has been outside of the state as it relates to engineering, as it relates to, you know, sales and marketing and software design. And so we've had to go outside of the state to recruit. And in that, we've also had to adjust as it relates to our desire for them to be present versus their desire to maintain some form of, you know, virtual presence. And so it's a give and a take there. So while I would love for them to be, you know, we've had to kind of compromise on that a bit. Mm-hmm.
We're actually out of time. And I don't know when we hit zero, but we talked before we started, how are these four ladies gonna talk in 30 minutes? So I know we could probably extend the conversation. Sorry to cut us off so quickly, but I swear I had 14 minutes a minute ago and now we're down to zero. So any quick, like 15-second final thoughts on how we make Michigan a top 10 state?
My 10 seconds is invest in Michigan. Michigan, invest in Michigan. We have great companies here. And I know that there's you know, it's attractive to bring companies from outside of the state, but we have some phenomenal talent here. Invest in those that are here.
Yeah, I would say just make sure that we've got the infrastructure to support the talent growth and keeping the talent here, because we've got a lot of great momentum.
Yeah.
Radical collaboration. Let's build the future together.
I don't know, it's America's greatest state. Tell everyone the story.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Ladies, thank you so much.
Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Support also provided by the Cynthia and Edsel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit PBS.
DTE Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit PBS. Among the state's largest foundations committed to Michigan-focused giving, we support organizations that are doing exceptional work in our state. Learn more at dtefoundation.com.
We help organizations find their voices through what they do and who they impact. We are VVK PR and Creative, a Detroit agency telling the stories of critical issues affecting the big picture and the small moments. Stories at Skyline Heights and on-the-ground influence. We lead with relationships first, solutions always, and with diversity as our compass. VVK PR and Creative.
Nissan Foundation, and viewers like you.